There's a power outage in Boston, so we discuss how to bring some electricity to this Red Sox lineup.
You are Locked On Red Sox, your daily Boston Red Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I want to welcome you back into the Locked On Red Sox podcast, and thank you so much for making Locked On Red Sox your first listen of every single day. I am your host, Jake Ignaszewski, and here, as always, with my co-host, NESN's Lauren Willand. And we decided to touch on one of the major question marks regarding the Red Sox offense going into 2023, which is the lack of power in this Red Sox lineup. And this was something that was a massive issue for the team throughout last season. They were able to get on base, but weren't able to hit a lot of balls out of the ballpark. And it feels very similar, in my opinion, to 2017, right before the Red Sox picked up JD Martinez, where going into that offseason, they were really lacking a power bat or somebody in the middle of that lineup that was able to bring not only some power, but also some electricity to that lineup, especially right after David Ortiz ended up retiring. But with the Red Sox going into this next season, they have a lot of great guys that can get on base, but nobody that is going to be able to really put up, over 25 to 30 home runs outside of one guy in Rafael Devers.
Yeah, I mean, you said it best in the beginning. There's a power outage, right? So that was a big thing in losing Bogarts and not really replacing the bat there, and losing JD Martinez. Like that is power that you've lost as well. But hopefully Justin Turner can slot into that DH role, but not be relied on too much. But yeah, you look at up and down this lineup, and there are candidates out there, whether it's trade or free agency, but these aren't names that they'll probably won't get fans too excited that we're going to talk about, because all the major free agents and all the major power is gone. But there was a lot of issues, and we talked about that a lot last season in 2022 about it was not being able to score with runners in scoring position, not being able to take advantage of men being on base, and it came down to just lack of power, lack of patience, and lack of putting the ball in play. And that's still a huge question mark going into 2023.
And when you look at sort of the statistics regarding the Red Sox offense last season, ranked 20th in home runs with 155. And when you really look down the list of the home run leaders for the team last year, it's Rafael Devers with 27 home runs. Obviously, when you look at it, I believe in the second half, he only had like 6 home runs, had a massive power outage, mainly due to being injured for some of the time during the second half. But wouldn't be surprised if we see a full season out of Devers, especially with some development. He could get up to that 40 number. But then you also look at Trevor Story as well, very limited to only 94 games. And he's somebody that I feel like some people forget also has produced a lot of great power numbers throughout his career. We'll see if, going from Fenway Park to Coors Field, how much that makes a difference. Obviously, we saw last year didn't make too much difference, but at the same time, majority of those home runs, I believe 9 of them came from just 1 month of May. And so if he's able to get, 150, close to 162 games, could probably see him get 25 to 30 home runs. But as you mentioned, JD Martinez out of that lineup, Xander Bogaerts out of that lineup. When you really look at the list, it was JD Martinez tied for second with 16 home runs, and then Bogaerts was ranked third in terms of home runs. Then you had Dalbec with 12, who really barely played. But, you're going to need somebody a slot in the middle of that lineup, whether it's, coming off the bench or it's slotting somebody in the outfield, middle infield, whatever it is, to really be able to bring some sort of electricity or power to this Red Sox lineup. But I want to start off with one guy that the Red Sox could look towards potentially trading for with the Baltimore Orioles within division. And especially, with the Orioles maybe looking towards now competing, that still doesn't mean that they'd be open to, offloading some contracts that could be bogging down some of their payroll or some guys who are coming up on free agency very, very soon. And so Anthony Santander, he's a guy who has is an outfielder and really was, in my opinion, the main staple for the Orioles throughout their rebuilding process. Was one of the best players on that roster, despite them, losing 106, 110 games, multiple seasons, but ended up batting 240 last season, smacked 30 bombs. And I feel like he would be able to bring some great consistency to this Red Sox lineup, not only offensively, but power wise, and also some great leadership.
Yeah, and you think after he had such a disappointing 2021 season, and that was between injuries, his strikeouts rose, walks fell. So you see him bounce back in 2022. You'd think that maybe he'd want to, or I'm sure he does, want to bounce back from the 2021 season and build off of the 2022 season that saw a lot of good offense from him. Now, his defense wasn't always the best. I feel like he was either a terrible defender or just kind of an above average defender. There was really no in between there, but you look at what you need, right? And that's power. And his numbers looked good last year. And like I said, you think he'd want to continue to build off of that and continue to contribute to a team that is sort of not fully rebuilding, but they say they want to be competitive. It's a historic franchise still, but I do like that. The only thing, he would be needed to be traded for. What does a package for someone like him look like? Probably nothing too crazy, which is obviously a big plus. But overall, I think that you like somebody like this in your lineup, and he's also a switch hitter. So that's always, I feel like that's such an underrated aspect. I mean, we don't see it much in every season, but I'm always pro switch hitter. If you can add that kind of power, that kind of person, and then the power behind it to the lineup, gives you a bit more of a chance against any pitcher on the mound.
Yeah, exactly. And when you look at his power numbers, you mentioned a little bit of a down year in 2021, but in 2020 and throughout the 60 game season, ended up hitting 11 home runs. And then 2019 ended up hitting 20. And he also does have some good control within his contract. Has 2 more years of arbitration, so it's not like he's going to be a rental for this season. And one thing that I also did want to preface before we continue to go down this list is, obviously we started off with an outfielder, but, majority of these guys that we're going to be talking about that, are mainly focused on and great at power is we're going to avoid going towards, a second baseman or a shortstop. I understand that the Red Sox need a middle infielder, but when you look at those two positions, not only with the players that are currently available, whether it's free agency or trade, but just in general, you don't really see a lot of power come out of the shortstop or second base position. And so we're mainly going to be focusing on the outfield, first base, catcher, and those sort of positions, because that's where we normally see majority of the power come from. And one player who was a lot of hate from Red Sox fans towards this player, and maybe some Yankees fans now too as well, is catcher Gary Sanchez. And especially with the catching position being up in question for the Red Sox, is it going to be Reese McGuire and Connor Wong, sort of that platoon, or will they add somebody else? But Sanchez obviously is not the best defensive catcher that there is out there, but is definitely one of the best power sort of catchers that there is out there, which is relatively rare outside of Wilson Contreras. And obviously from what we saw from Buster Posey earlier in his career, like those are two players that really come to mind that are very big power bats coming from the backstop. But Sanchez ended up hitting 205 over 112 games, 16 home runs with the Twins last year. A little bit of a lower power production from him, but we saw in 2021 hit 23 home runs, 2020 hit 10, and then 2019 is where he really showed off that power stroke with 34.
Yeah, I mean, we know the power is there. And you said it, that he's not regarded as one of the top defensive catchers. But according to Fangraphs, he had his best framing numbers per Fangraphs metrics since 2018. So, I mean, that's, again, that's defense. We're talking about power here. But that is also something to look at, because are the Red Sox going to commit to a Connor Wong, Reese McGuire catching tandem in 2023? It certainly seems that way. And we've seen that they're both capable guys, but do you want someone who can bring some power to this lineup, and then maybe some, versatility, just some extra depth? I mean, we say it all the time, right? You can never have too much depth. And who comes after Connor Wong? Who is the next catcher kind of ready in that system? We don't really know, right? Connor Wong has been the guy, And I think Sanchez, for as much hate as he's gotten from Red Sox fans while he was with the Yankees, of course, I think he makes a lot of sense because the Red Sox finished 2022 with the 20th or 21st most home runs as a team. They only had 155 on the season, which is just, you look at that lineup and it's just pathetic. They certainly, I feel like they're a lineup that should have hit well more than 155, but it's not like he's not the best defensive catcher out there, but when you have offense and you can have that pop added to the lineup, it's maybe worth, just calling him up, being like, hey, what's going on? Like, what are we feeling? So I like him, and I think he makes a lot of sense, and I think he makes the most sense for the players that we are going to talk about today. And I don't think he'd come very expensive. I'm not saying he'd come cheap by any means, but I think that it might be worth exploring. And hey, you can get Ryan Brazier off the roster if you sign him. It's a win-win.
No, yeah, exactly. And, I think especially with how rare it is to find a power hitting catcher and with what the Red Sox need in this lineup, I think it would be definitely something to look towards. And especially, with his experience playing at Fenway Park, I'll never forget anytime when playing for the Yankees, he came and played at Fenway. He would always smack it over the monster. And it was just so simple for him. It seemed like he could have done it with his eyes closed. You could have given him a blindfold and he would have been able to do that. But I think, really one thing that the Red Sox need to think about, especially, regarding him, is that versatility. We've seen with a lot of different players, they want to be able to, not only have one singular person be at that DH position. Curious to see how they really use Justin Turner. Mentioned that he might be at first base and DH, but that's what they've mentioned in the past, and so I feel like maybe his limited versatility of Sanchez might be something that might hinder the Red Sox interest, but definitely something to look at. And looking towards another Yankee as well, or former Yankee, and Luke Voit, he could definitely be a great candidate as well. Ended up hitting 226 over 132 games with the Washington Nationals. Hit 22 home runs, and also has some good experience playing at Fenway Park and against the Red Sox, and has also had a lot of success as well.
Yeah, he has. And if you bring in someone like Luke Voit, that's going to pose even more questions for Bobby Delbeck's future, which we talked about on our last episode of Locked On Red Sox. But if they were to trade Delbeck, or even if they were to bring in Luke Voit, that Delbeck's pretty much gone from this team. But it would open up a spot for him. And I feel like he'd be solid for this Red Sox team. He did lead the league in home runs in 2020. Yes, that was the COVID shortened season, but we still look at those numbers. We still look at that half of a season, and he only had, I think, not many into 2021, and he did have injuries that he dealt with as well. But when you just look at what the Red Sox lineup is missing, and he adds more depth, and you don't really know, like, what is Tristan Casas going to be the full-time first baseman? Is he going to be your guy, or is he going to platoon, or is he going to have somebody who plays 60, 70 games at the position, whether it's rest, hopefully not injury, or maybe, when he struggles against certain pitchers, you can bring somebody in who has the experience and who we know can hit. So I do like this one too. He's also never made more than $6 million. So he'd probably also be a pretty good option if you want to stay cheap. Like Sanchez, I don't think Sanchez would make more than $7 million, but if it gives you a little more power, especially off the bench too, I hate that ex-Yankees make a lot of sense for the Red Sox, but right now in this part of the offseason, they do.
And I've seen a lot of people throughout this offseason bring up Luke Voigt's name, and you might be thinking, well, how is this really going to work out? Two first basemen on the roster, and you mentioned it. He could be a great replacement for Bobby Delbeck, who somebody we mentioned it multiple times. You know what you're going to get out of him, and I feel like Voigt, looking at his numbers, even though they're relatively and slightly better than Delbeck, he reminds me a little bit of a much better Bobby Delbeck, where he does struggle striking out, but he is able to hit for power, does get on base, but maybe slightly better than Delbeck, but he also does bring you that experience, brings you the ability and the understanding of how to play at Fenway, and sort of what entails with everything like that. But, as we continue to look at potential options for power bats for the Red Sox, we're also going to continue to try and help you feel a little bit better about maybe betting on this team next season. And the best place to do that is over on betonline.net, which is your number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from pro football to league to college bowl season to basketball. We've got it all at betonline.net. If you love sports podcasts, which I bet you do if you're listening to this, you can even find those at BetOnline as well. We are always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting info. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. And, continuing sort of with that first base / DH sort of trend, Trey Mancini is one person that I'm very surprised hasn't really gotten as much noise as we expected. He's somebody who struggled a lot with the Houston Astros after getting traded from the Orioles during last year's trade deadline. Went sort of hitless throughout the playoffs with the Astros. Ended up getting a hit, I believe, in the final game of the World Series. But he's somebody as well who has the leadership, especially with young players when he was with the Orioles, understands what it means to not only play at Fenway Park, but also has experience, just overcoming adversity. And I feel like, especially, what he went through, with his cancer journey, but also fighting to come back. He understands what it means if he has a down season to fight back to get to where he was before. And, what we saw from him last year, 239 batting average over 143 games, hit 18 home runs. But I'm curious to see if he's able to tap back into that power that we saw in 2021, where he hit 19.
Yeah, I like Trey Mancini. I do, and I have a ton of respect for everything that he's overcome. But I just think I hate calling someone like Trey Mancini overrated because he's a good person. But I do think that if the Red Sox are looking strictly for power, that maybe they don't look at Trey Mancini. I think that he's past his prime. I mean, we could say that about other guys here, but I just think that they're better options than Mancini. And I mean, he's been in the league for a long time. He knows he knows how to handle adversity, both professionally and personally. He's played on some really bad teams, and then he's played on some really good teams with the Astros. So I would have liked Trey Mancini like 4 or 5 years ago when he had more power, maybe more potential. But I don't think that it'd be worth bringing him in if they're looking for power to add to this lineup. I just think it would be kind of the same old story with other players in there. And then of course there's the whole like, oh, where would he play? But you have, if you're taking power, Tristan Casas out of your lineup for Trey Mancini, I don't know if that makes the most sense, especially the last few seasons that he's had. But I like him. I like the player. I like the guy. I just don't think he's a good fit for this lineup if you're looking for power.
Right. I see what you mean, and especially, with the we want to see more of Tristan Casas. We want to give him the up at bats. And, with some of these guys, especially with major league ready players, sometimes the thought in our minds might be, well, maybe they'll take some up at bats away from Casas that could really be able to help out his development. Yes, it would be good to have that platoon player, that backup player, if he does either get injured or doesn't play as well right off the bat. We saw that with Bobby Delbeck. Ended up struggling a lot during the first half of his rookie season. Ended up, figuring it out in the second half, and especially with the injuries that we've seen Casas have over the last year or so. Ankle injury during his time in AAA last season, and then also hurt his knee during Winter League. So he's somebody that you also want to have sort of a backup plan for. Curious to see if the Red Sox look maybe towards Luke Voit or Trey Mancini, as we mentioned, to sort of replace Bobby Delbeck off the bench. We'll see. But two guys that they could also get in trade that, I'd be very curious to see what it would really take to get two of these players. First one is Max Kepler. Ended up hitting 227, 9 home runs last year with 115 games under his belt. And you might be thinking, Jake, why are we talking about a guy who only hit 9 home runs and we're talking about him adding power to the lineup? Well, I'll tell you why. In 2021, he hit 19 home runs. 2020, during the 60 games, in my opinion, those numbers don't really correlate, obviously, with 162. Ended up hitting 9 home runs, similar to what he hit this past season. In 2019, 36 bombs. there has to be something there that did not work out for him over these past few seasons, whether it was a change in swing, they figured him out at the plate, but you could also point very similarly to what happened to Cody Bellinger. Ended up having an MVP season, smacking balls out of the ballpark left and right, and then something happened. Whether it's mental, whether it's physical, who knows? But Max Kepler is somebody that you could potentially use off the bench as an outfielder, or he could be a platoon with Verdugo or Yoshida. But being able to have a guy still very young, who, if you're able to tap back into that power that he had in 2019 to be able to help him almost hit 40 bombs, might as well as try it out. But at the same time, with the amount of question marks that this team has, it's tough to really feel confident in that move.
I am very anti Max Kepler. No offense to Max Kepler. I'm sure he's a great person, but him as the player, no. I think the Red Sox should absolutely stay away. He's coming off the worst season of his career, and he turns 30 soon, so he's past the whole prime thing. But not only that, he's also entering the last guaranteed year of his contract. I don't want the Red Sox to take a flyer on somebody who could be a rental and could just be a complete bust. And yes, we don't know what Yoshida will bring to this team, but I don't want to bring in somebody who's coming off a terrible season for someone who's been part of the Twins core for the last 7 years. But very anti, keep Kepler out of Boston. I don't think the Red Sox should even take a look at him. It's just you already brought in people who are quote unquote older and old for baseball. Let's not bring in another 30-year-old who may not turn this around. Yes, we've seen the potential. We've seen potential from all the people that we've talked about, but of all the people that we have on this list and that we've talked about, big old hard no on Max Kepler.
I hear what you're saying. I hear what you're saying, and it with this list, it was tough to come up with guys that seem very logical, to be quite honest with you, because outside of just looking for guys that are able to have that power stroke and that fit within the holes that the Red Sox currently have, majority of the guys that are going to hit over 25 to 30 home runs, who are you 100% know that this guy is going to work out and be able to slide into your lineup, and that it's going to 100% fix the power issue. Those guys are either going to cost a lot of prospects and value through the trade market, because as you already mentioned at the beginning of the show, like all those options on free agency who would have cost 25 to 30 million dollars, and if the Red Sox aren't willing to give that out to multiple guys, including Xander Bogaerts throughout this offseason, I don't expect them to hand it out to one of the top guys from free agency earlier in this offseason. But also on the trade market as well, even for a guy like Brian Reynolds or Sean Murphy, who's power hitting catcher, that costs a lot of money for a lot of prospect capital for the Braves. And, I bet it's going to cost a lot for Brian Reynolds as well. And he wouldn't even be able to really fix the power outage for the Red Sox in their lineup. So, really looking at sort of these options, I think, one other guy that, I thought about, who, has really showed some good power throughout his short MLB career so far, and really was able to bounce back, after being designated for assignment from the Guardians this past season, is Franmil Reyes. He's somebody who, once he went over to Chicago, really started to figure it out. And, we saw it throughout this past season, ended up playing 118 games total between Chicago and Cleveland, ended up hitting 14 home runs. Little bit of a down year for him, drastically from what we saw in 2021, where he hit 30 home runs, but also in 2019, he hit 37. So he has that power stroke. If he's able to tap back into that and really be able to get back on track to where he was in 19 or 21, that would be great to see, not only just for the player, but also if the Red Sox were able to get him in a trade with the Cubs, which probably wouldn't cost barely anything. The Cubs just picked him up right off of waivers. They got him right for free. And so, being able to, see maybe what he has left, that would be interesting. But then you're also getting a very similar player to Bobby Delbeck, where, he'll strike out 150 times and maybe not even get 100 hits, which he did this past season.
Yeah, I think he's too much of a risk, unfortunately. I mean, the hope that before the Guardians got rid of him was that he could really kind of tap back into that power, and he just never really could. And it's unfortunate, because you want to see the players succeed, but I think he'd be too much of a risk to bring into the Red Sox team that really needs to address this specific situation with somebody who's proven they can do it, not someone who did it 3 or 4 years ago, and not someone who still has the potential to do so. And we've talked about this with, the Red Sox getting players who have shown the promise, or who have shown stability throughout their career, and not just, oh, well, maybe they'll tap back into what they once were, or tap back into that potential that they've been told, or we've been told that they have for their entire career, and just never do. But if the Red Sox really want power and to address a position that they need, we don't know what's going on with Carlos Correa. I'm just saying. If they can get him short term, I doubt it'll be who knows what's going to happen. This is just getting incredibly weirder by the day, or not weirder, but just like so much more unknown by the day. The Red Sox should just swoop in, sign him, and make for a happy fan base and power, shortstop. Yep. Boom. I'm just saying.
And especially if it's a 2 or 3 year deal. Because I think he would be very interested in a deal that would be able to help him not only get a high AAV, be able to add to his value, show that those injury sort of rumors are squash them all, and silence the haters. And then if he's able to get a 2 or 3 year contract, you got to remember he's 28. If he's able to be back as a free agent when he's 30. Maybe he could get a Xander Bogaerts contract, or even more. If the Padres were open to giving Xander 11 years, 280, what's saying that a team that would stop a team from giving, Correa a 10-year, $300 million deal? Who knows? I'm getting a lot more comfortable with, giving him. Before it was 35. Now I'm open to 40, 45 AAV.
Jake is opening the checkbook. Jake is like, here you go. Make it rain.
Just at this point to fix the issue, not only with shortstop, with power, but, if you're able to get him for 2 or 3 years, who knows where Meyer will be in 2 or 3 years, and where his development and readiness to be an MLB player will really be. But we're going to look at some of your guys' reactions on how the Red Sox can fix the power outage from over on Twitter. But before we do that, Lauren just wants to take a second to talk to you about Built Bar.
If you're looking for a treat that's super delicious, but you don't want to compromise the fat and the calories, then you have got to try a Built Bar. And we just got through the holidays. A lot of resolutions and people's goals for 2023 are eating healthier and maybe getting back into the gym. For me, it's always about eating healthier. And I don't like to compromise taste, especially I'm a picky enough eater as it is. I don't want to compromise already what I like. But the Built Bars are the thing for you. You have to try it. That they're healthy. They taste good. They're so delicious that you probably won't think they're good for you. You probably think you're just eating a candy bar, and you're probably like, hey, Lauren, what makes Built Bars so good? Well, they're covered in 100% real chocolate. Their macros are amazing. They fit any sort of lifestyle, any kind of diet you are on. And there's a ton of flavors. When I tell you that there is something for everyone, there's churro, there's cookie dough, which is my favorite. There's coconut almond. And the list goes on and on. And you can go to Walmart, walk right to the pharmacy section, grab yourself a box of Built Bars. You can pick up the 4-bar box of cookies and cream, which is exactly what I did this morning. You can get the double chocolate or the coconut puffs. And if you're close to a Sam's Club, you can run right in and get the 13-bar box, which has several different flavors, brownie batter, churro. You can thank me later. Just head on over to your nearest Walmart, Sam's Club, and get yourself some Built Bars. You will not regret it.
So now that we've given you our opinions on how the Red Sox could fix their power outage, we wanted to react to some of your opinions. So I put over on Twitter, who should the Red Sox add to fix their power bat issue? And we had some people give some really good suggestions. Red Sox Sam _ said Correa. Same with Sam Webster. They both the Sams agree with Correa. And then we got Ryan Linley. He said, I also like Adam Duvall. Duvall was somebody that I looked at, but didn't really fit 100% the power sort of category that I was thinking of. But he said, I like one of our options could be to put Kike at shortstop, sign him to play center field. He's a really good defender, and I think he could really thrive at Fenway.
Yeah, those are good names. I mean, those are somebody we haven't talked about, but I like it. I like that. And I know some of the listeners had said some same people that we talked about and people that we've already brought up, but I like it. I don't hate it. I don't love it, but I like it.
And then we got the Rio TMC. He said, I'd rather have Luke Voit, brings a lot more power and potential than Mancini. I'm a fan of Trey, though, simply a good human. Sort of like what you said.
Yeah, like I never want to like hate on the guy because of what he's gone through and what he's just never he's always just come off as a genuine person. But I just think that he's just not a good fit for this team right now. And we talked about Luke Voit and what he can bring to the team. So I'm with you.
And then we got Undo_OW. He said the thing it comes down to is like where will he play, which I think that's what he meant. Which I see platoon, but aren't there rumors that we are going after Yuli Gurriel? Kind of makes no sense, I guess. I don't know. I think we chase after a weapon in the outfield, in my opinion. I agree. Let's go towards the outfield. I did see
Yeah.
the Yuri Gurriel sort of rumor. The person who I forget, I'm blanking on the name, who did report that, but he ended up stepping back off of that report. And I sort of with the same thing with Mancini, Gurriel, in my opinion, wouldn't really fit. Very old bat, more older than most people think. He's 38 years old,
Yeah.
even though, he 2 years ago, was able to have really good offensive production, really dipped down throughout this past season. But really curious to see how the Red Sox do really fill out the rest of this lineup. And we're going to continue to keep you updated, not only on our thoughts surrounding the rumors, but also giving you our predictions on what the Red Sox depth chart could look like prior to the 2023 opening day. But as always, we greatly appreciate everybody tuning in to the Locked On Red Sox podcast and for making Locked On Red Sox your first listen of every single day. Now make your second listen and check out Locked On MLB Prospects. Host Lindsey Crosby is a prospect encyclopedia, and he's going deep on the MLB stars of tomorrow. We've had him on a few times, very intelligent, does a great job of becoming very prepared to each and every single episode, whether he's coming on this podcast or even on Locked On MLB Prospects. Does a great job of giving you everything that you need to know about each and every single team's farm systems and the prospects to watch. So it's free and available wherever you get your podcasts. You can also follow us over on Twitter. It's LO_Red Sox. Myself on Twitter is at Jake Iggy, and Lauren over at La 3 Laws, Lauren with 4 R's. And one thing that we really try to do, as you've seen in these past 2 episodes, is bring the audience involved. We want to sort of ask your opinions. We're going to give ours, but we don't know everything. And at the same time, your perspectives, your opinions help bring more light to what we're talking about, and also bring a lot more fun. And we want to do everything that we can to make you a part of each and every single episode. So make sure to follow us over there on Twitter. And we're going to continue to bring you great content throughout this offseason. So also make sure to subscribe over on YouTube or wherever audio platforms that you listen to. But we hope everybody has a great rest of their day. Appreciate everybody tuning in. We'll end it how we always end it. Let's go Sox. Peace.